This video contains the spoils. Bayonetta is a single-player, action-adventure, hack-and-slash, beat-em-up, anime mature, female protagonist, character action soon-to-be trilogy, where you play as Hideki Kamiya's ideal woman in a non-stop, infinite, climactic, genocide crusade against white people. If you have ever looked at a Greco-Roman statue and wondered, does it bleed? Bayonetta says yes and allows you to drown the screen in an ocean of blood with a variety of torture devices and Bayonetta's hair. There's also a sequel I'll talk about later. In this game, you'll travel through Spain, the Atlantic Ocean, Spain on Fire, and Trump Tower in an epic quest to discover just what the fuck Bayonetta is doing in Bayonetta. And it's your job to greet any inhumane creature that tries to stop you with a swift, elegant, but mercilessly painful death, with many fantastic enemy designs such as Twitch streamers, Hot Wheels, a car, and a fucking boat. Seriously? Plus, there's a really awkward part where one of them falls in love with a child. I didn't know where else to put this in the video, so you're getting it now. And as all witches are infamous for, Bayonetta uses a variety of open carry firearms and lethal weapons. The real kicker is that some weapons can be either equipped to her hands or her heels. Yes, this includes her guns. These are collected by luring out demons you never actually see with some dank tunes as your black pimp sugar daddy journeys into hell to condense them into weapons. Basically, the entirety of Monster Hunter without the fun part. He's also a secret final boss. I don't have footage of me fighting him though because I'm fucking poor. And while you are free to build and experiment with different weapon combinations, I believe the only one worth mentioning is her katana and heel-strapped bazookas, because the greatest power in this world is traditional Japanese blacksmithing and the Second Amendment. These do a lot of damage, and they can also break the game. Now together, let us embark on a double review into the origins of Smash 4's most hated character, as I do my best to explain the convoluted clusterfuck of this time-traveling shitshow of a story, and unravel the mystery of Bayonetta's intricate fighting style. And I see no better place to begin with than where her moveset comes from. In a stylish opening sequence showcasing Bayonetta's British nanny mannerisms and tendency to tease the camera with sexual innuendos, the game's basics are taught to the player. Firstly, you can't play this game with one hand. Secondly, Bayonetta uses a variety of punches and kicks to chain together combos, sometimes ending in devastatingly powerful Wicked Weave attacks, fisting or heel stomping her angelic foes into gory messes. You lucky fuckers. These are essential as they award the most combo points and damage. Given the handful of weapons, there are a few combos to learn, but don't worry, only like 3 are worth using. There is also Bullet Climax, letting her firearms take center stage. And if you feel like rooting yourself in place as the camera zooms in so close that you can't see who's creeping up behind you just so your mediocre guns can do some damage, be my guest. Now the first of Bayonetta's more complex mechanics is none other than... yes, she is a stand user. Bayonetta's got a lot of JoJo references actually. Every pose struck, every demon summoned, every cutscene, they're all JoJo references. I'm getting off track. Dodging an attack at the last moment will activate Witch Time, allowing her to freely assault or launch her angelic foes, rewarding your irrefutable skill to panic dodge at the last moment. Second is the ever so simple dodge offset. If you hold down your attack input while dodging, you can continue your combo string once the animation finishes, and there is no limit to how many times you can do this. This is an excellent tool in the hands of basically anyone, allowing skilled players to create a string of seamless, graceful, and uninterrupted combos, and the rest of us to spam it in the vain hope that we'll accidentally trigger Witch Time. Finally, there are the torture attacks. As if the game didn't already have enough ways to lay a wicked medieval smackdown against Caucasians, Bayonetta takes things a step further with a very hands-on lecture in medieval history. A bar of magic is all you'll need to unleash this power, and either completely one-shot enemies, or drain half their health in the most gloriously gory ways imaginable by simply mashing a button to an animation. It's very simple, although some of these drag on for a little too long, which can be inconvenient when the child I'm supposed to be defending is currently short-circuiting. You can also transform into a fucking bird. Bird up! If all of this sounds complicated, don't worry. It's pretty simple to pick up, and there's always a practice mode you can access from any loading screen. And let me tell you, a practice tool in the first game is more than what I could say about Devil May Cry, though this may require impeccable timing with the near-instant loading screens of the PC port. In every level, you will be pitted against a variety of foes to test your might and see just how effective your very intentional evasion skills are, as you chain together ruthless and brutal combos. But some of these fights can only be experienced by backtracking after a certain point in each level, which is kind of fucking gay. But what would a Bayonetta review be without mentioning the Alfheims, secret challenges around basically every corner. This includes just before you fight the final boss. These challenges may range from "don't mind if I do" to "just fucking kill me now." Though they are optional, they're required if you want to get a decent trophy score for each level. So if you wish to retain your sanity, do them once and forever ignore them. Otherwise, good luck. To increase your health, you will need to purchase or acquire Still Beating the Charts. But that won't save you from dying a million times, because this game is designed for Japanese boys who love it when older women step on and degrade them. So it's a tad bit challenging and full of extremely fun insta-kill QTEs. I default to playing Devil May Cry on Dante Must Die most days, but Bayonetta can still thoroughly shaft me. Lastly, there are these strangely phallic boss fights that you must first carefully disassemble, reduce to a floating mound of flesh, and then summon a brand new hair-bound monstrosity to vor them. Make sure you wear your PPE while doing this, because these are some pretty hazardous conditions. And yeah, that's about it. There's an item crafting system, but the game actively discourages using them, and so do I. There's also a handful of books filled to the brim with exquisitely written lore, if you're a fucking nerd and feel like reading them. We all know what we're here for: to elegantly mutilate hordes of Lovecraftian creatures with a healthy variety of combos, unapologetically draconian torture devices, and even their own armaments in an extravaganza of violence. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and in Bayonetta, there's more than a million ways to unleash your closeted sadistic tendencies. It's best to think of the combo meter as the pain meter. The more suffering you inflict, the more likely you'll hear Bayonetta call you a bad boy. And who would want to miss out on that? I don't have a problem. I know this is a lot to take in, but we haven't even begun talking about the story yet. So strap in and buckle your jimmies, Willie, because we're going to briefly dip our toes into the lore of Bayonetta. As I said before, Bayonetta's story has you visiting exotic locales to answer the age-old question: why is Bayonetta? Sometimes reusing previously explored areas with gravity turned all fucky. This is my favorite kind of level design, and whether it's in the city streets, on a plane, or in heaven, there's no shortage of action and shitty insta-kill quicktime events to keep your eyes glued to the screen. In this campaign, you will meet several colorful characters, starting with John, whose sole responsibility is to physically and verbally abuse Bayonetta until you table the turns on her by the game's end. Then there's Luca, who is there, and this little girl named Cereza that you'll unfortunately be forced to defend for a bit. Thankfully, that doesn't last for too long, but golly gee fucking willikers, I do wonder who this little girl with glasses, a British accent, and the same eye and hair color as Bayonetta turns out to be. This is where the actual story begins, which is simply who exactly has been trying to kill me using a horde of sentient sculptures, which is an excellent question. As it turns out, it's Bayonetta's irrefutably fabulous father, Baldur, because every action game needs a hero with some sort of parental issues. He also has a nice cock around his neck. After ascending his tower, he reveals his dastardly evil plan, which was to make Bayonetta babysit a past version of herself and then send her past self back into the past to alter her past so that her past was no longer her actual past and it's not a forgotten past, so that now she remembers her past and awakens her Sharingan. Allowing her dad to infuse the Statue of Liberty, he launches into space with the power of the Sharingan and Byakugan to remake the universe in his image. It's best not to think too hard about it. And then Luca dies, except he doesn't. And then Jean just fucking kills herself, but not really. And then Baldur dies, then he doesn't. Then Bayonetta and Jean both die, but they don't actually. And then Baldur really does die in the rich— oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, he's actually dead. The game's last hour has a strange fascination with people faking their deaths for attention. But anyway, after a very thrilling fight against a final boss that basically does nothing, Bayonetta summons an average white bitch on Halloween to fist her across the solar system and into the sun. The end. It's not a Shakespearean play, and I think that's great because I lack the mental capacity to understand those. But while Bayonetta is awesome, the game has a few problems. Let me start out with my biggest gripe: Jean. Not because I dislike her, I love Jeanne, and what I love most about Jeanne is beating the shit out of her. But how do I access her best fight? I fucking play Space Harrier for 10 minutes. This isn't a joke. The level where you face Jeanne for the last time, her best fight, forces you to endure 10 minutes of non-stop, infinite, climactic, vomit-inducing camera action. Quality game design. And if you're not one for being interrupted while doing the deed, don't worry. The game will make sure it does at every corner. Because there are a lot of gimmicky sections and interruptions, with one literally planted at the end of every fucking level. Some of these don't overstay their welcome and can be a little fun, but others go on for a bit too long. But it doesn't stop there. Unskippable finishers that you witness more than once start to bring down the pacing. Even in Jeanne's last fight, the action is interrupted thrice before you're finally just left alone to duke it out with her. These scenes add to the spectacle of Bayonetta's first impression, but are slogs in subsequent playthroughs once you realize just how shallow and uninteresting they are. Kind of like the entirety of Final Fantasy XV. I also won't forget to mention how enemies can either attack you immediately after their introductions or if you whack a statue to spawn them. They are avoidable, yes, but it's annoying. Lastly, the game's last few chapters contain my favorite kind of game design, making me fight significantly weaker versions of bosses I killed like an hour ago to try and make me feel stronger. It's very effective. There were a lot of instances when I was getting footage for this review when I just wasn't having fun, and these minor issues become more apparent and mind-numbing the more playthroughs one goes through, which leads me to believe that those who try to pure platinum this game are either the bravest or most mentally broken of us all. Also, this 1 pixel on Bayonetta's health bar for the PC port bugs the shit out of me. Look, I'd encourage anyone who hasn't tried Bayonetta yet to stimulate their senses and play through this sensational, erotic adventure. But the many problems I have with Bayonetta can be best summed up in saying that Bayonetta feels like it doesn't want me to play Bayonetta. The combat system Platinum created is nothing short of brilliant, but there's no shortage of things getting in the way of me enjoying it. Now, if only there was a sequel that could— Whoa, look at that, it's Bayonetta 2! The first thing you might notice is just how fucking gorgeous it is, if not a little bright. The first game had some really nice set pieces and action, but my god, Bayonetta 2 makes the entirety of Bayonetta 1 look like dirty hogwash. And everything you're witnessing so far is in the prologue, and it only gets better from there. Most issues with Bayonetta 1 that hindered replayability and artificially piled on death counts are shot, heel-stomped, and devoured into oblivion. Gone are the insta-kill quick-time events, gone are a lot of the annoying, terrible enemy designs, gone is fucking Angel Attack. Though the game does have its fair share of gimmicky sections, they don't overstay their welcome. And I have to admit, the shooter section in this one is pretty fun, especially since it doesn't force me to regurgitate. A dodge that doesn't spin the entire screen when I use it. How fucking innovative. And it doesn't stop at dropping the dead weight of the first game. What is Bayonetta without a tool belt of over-the-top armaments to flay her victims with? Don't worry, that's taken care of, as Bayonetta took a trip down to the Home Depot for some pretty crazy new weapons, including the chainsaw, the hammer, the whips, the katana, and the triple-bladed scythe. Why are there 3 of them? But my favorite weapon is undoubtedly the chain chomp. This is an actual weapon, and it's really good. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot. Each weapon of mass destruction comes with a free 1-year protection plan and a brand new slew of combos for you to once again comb through. So good luck. Although some of these new weapons, pardon my French, aren't very good, but we'll come back to that. Now, nothing balances gratuitous violence with the arousal of the mating ritual quite like Bayonetta does, and what better way to spice up your love life than with some new partners? In this game, there's some new faces, literally and figuratively, with Bayonetta's promiscuous behavior attracting the attention of both angels and demons. But it doesn't matter who they are, one thing remains consistent. Crossing paths with Bayonetta results in a one-way trip into whatever afterlife creatures from the afterlife are supposed to go to. Finally, there's the addition of the Umbran Climax. I don't know how to say this next part without it sounding a little on the nose, so please refrain from making any sex jokes for the next 15 seconds or so. In Bayo 1, our heroine would only climax during boss fights as she let down her hair and enters her serious mode. But in the sequel, with enough magic and the push of a button, Bayonetta can climax on command. with every single one of her strikes backed up with the power of a wicked weave to fill my screen with enough visual information to give me epilepsy. I don't know what's going on. With these new additions and some breathtakingly gorgeous environments to paint red with the innards of your foes, Bayonetta 2 feels like the perfect sequel at first. Her animations are fluid, more varied, and complement her character excessively well. The faster torture attacks also ensure that your adrenaline-filled murdering spree isn't interrupted for a full-on 10 seconds, and instead becomes a natural part of the flow of combat. And I personally found myself using a wider variety of weapons than I did in the predecessor. But hold the phone, I just said it feels like the perfect sequel at first. Yeah, so 3 steps forward, 1 step back. Starting with the gameplay, there are plenty of genuine improvements, but Bayonetta 2 decides to do the smart thing and create some problems of its own, which can be hard to notice initially. And at first I had several paragraphs typed out for this, but I don't want to bore you with unnecessary details, so I'll try to keep it short. 1. Witch time's duration is greatly reduced, all the way down to just 1 second in some cases, and I mean an actual 1 to 2 seconds. 2. Some enemies and bosses will sporadically dodge or parry attacks and are sometimes impossible to hit or juggle without witch time, significantly hindering combo potential. 3. Enemy tells are a lot quieter and more cryptic than in the first game, for the most part. And 4. To compensate for Umbran Climax and likely a character that does triple Bayonetta's damage, her attacks and especially Wicked Weaves are much weaker than in the first game. Even some of the heavier, slower weapons feel like they're just not hitting hard enough. In isolation, these changes wouldn't be terrible, but combined they drastically hinder the combat experience. There'll be enemies you can't combo, launch, or sometimes even hit unless you use the 1 to 2 seconds of witch time you get by dodging their near non-existent tells for some mediocre damage, forcing you to either use the chainsaws or save Umbran Climax to get as much damage off as possible. And every attack on medium-sized foes outside of witch time runs the risk of being instantly parried. The fucking shield-bearing enemies have a more easily countered defense than most others. Umbran Climax is the likely culprit of what led to this insane nerf, but that's not the only issue it brings to the dinner table. Umbran Climax, torture attacks, and even Bullet Climax all use the same magic gauge. And what sounds better, using your guns to get off a few high-powered shots, insta-killing or severely damaging one enemy, or pushing one button to supercharge your combo, hit stun all enemies, regenerate your health, and conclude with an AoE finisher that'll leave most enemies dead or about to be. The game will incessantly remind you in combat that you can climax, so even a neuron-piloted primate like me can discern which one it desperately wants you to use. By no means is the combat terrible. The aforementioned problems are very unlikely to be discernible until higher difficulties or extended playtime. And while I don't want to sit here and bitch about Bayonetta 2 all day, there's still the story. I don't play Bayonetta games for some profound, intellectual masterpiece of storytelling, but whereas the first game was Bayonetta discovering who she was and the audience finding out who she is, she seems to take a backseat in her own sequel. It begins rather promising with Bayo in the spotlight and some ominous exposition about the Trinity of Realities, before being told we're going to have to travel to the Inferno, an untapped area of this universe so far. Not a bad start. And then this little fucker gets introduced and starts to complicate things. I don't hate Loki, but another tale of Bayonetta looking out for someone smaller than her while discovering some things about her past is a little too familiar. And he takes up a lot of both the story and gameplay, escorting him places so he can go, "Whoa, owie, I just remembered something." Though they tried tying them together, his goal awkwardly meshes with the initial "you need to go to hell to save Jean," so we spend an oddly insignificant amount of time in the Inferno, and Loki's necessity takes a lot of agency away from Bayonetta, which kind of sucks. See this? This is Bayonetta. I play Bayonetta because I want more Bayonetta. I don't do it for British Loki with white dreads, MC Hammer Pants, and the Millennium Puzzle featuring Bayonetta from the Devil May Cry series. There's also Baldur, and I'm not going to pretend for a second his identity is a mystery. Its obviousness is only shadowed by Cereza in the first game. I fucking love watching this guy in action, so reusing him in his prime as an initial primary antagonist was nice and all, but then I realized just how much Bayonetta ties itself into the first game with its weird prequel-sequel time loop. By the game's end, you'll have fought against Baldur, who's been teleported from the past to the present, only to travel back into the past to find Baldur in the past before his past got teleported to the present. So you can go back to the present with this different Baldur from the past to fight the final boss from the past who is now in the present, and then he teleports to the past to start the first game, which had its own complicated timeline stuff. It's a pretty wild story, honestly, but so much of the game is spent focused on giving more context to the past, very little is made for Bayonetta's future. Luca is also still present. Yes, he is most definitely there. And yeah, that's Bayonetta 2. Despite the unhealthy amount of time I spent explaining things I don't like about the game, Bayonetta 2 is still a ton of fun, and the vast amounts of improvements and polish it has over its predecessor is something I can't overlook. It's a fucking great game, and there's no shortage of carnage to be wrought in its many beautiful locales. I still really like both games. What other franchise gives me action, comedy, and a spectacle like this? But once again, heed my words here. I really like Bayonetta, but I don't love it. I want to, believe me. I want to love Bayonetta, but when I can't stomach most of the first game's gimmicks and I feel like the second game's combat is knee-deep with issues, I can't. But you bet your ass I'll play Bayonetta 3. I don't know how to end this video, so I'll just say this. If you haven't played Bayonetta yet, you owe it to yourself. I give Bayonetta 1 and 2 3 Witch Heart fragments out of 4. I'll see you next time. Hello there, my friend. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, a comment, or subscribing to help my channel grow. It'd mean a lot to me. Thank you.